President Trump is nearing the end of his second year in office, and he's also the focus of more than a half dozen investigations. Now, let's say this. We don't know exactly how many there are because some might not have been made public.
Yeah, but here's what we do know that is under investigation right now. The Trump Organization, the Trump Foundation, the Trump Campaign, the Trump Inauguration, and the Trump Transition, and the Trump Administration. All 6 of those under investigation as we sit here with you. And now CNN has learned special counsel Robert Mueller still wants to speak in person with President Trump about obstruction of justice. His lawyers, of course, adamant that that can't happen. The president previously answered written questions from the special counsel. The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, tells CNN they are against it because they don't trust Mueller.
Our next guest says President Trump is out of options in the face of these mounting investigations. Joining us now is Richard Painter. He's the former chief ethics attorney for George W. Bush and professor of corporate law at the University of Minnesota. Richard, welcome back to New Day. Let's start here with a pretty dramatic statement that you made this week, that you said it's time for President Trump's lawyers to negotiate a plea deal. Explain that.
Well, the president has serious exposure to criminal liability on several fronts. He has the case, the investigation that's proceeding in the Southern District of New York surrounding the payments to porn stars. He has the even more serious situation with Robert Mueller and the Russia investigation and the president's obstruction of justice there. The New York Attorney General is coming after the foundation and may very well have other investigations of the Trump Organization. And of course, he's going to have to deal with the United States House of Representatives Judiciary Committee in January. The president, at this juncture, really ought to consider negotiating while he has some negotiating power. The presidency offered to resign in return for reduced charges. His lawyer is already getting 3 years in prison for something that Donald Trump clearly told the lawyer to do. That in and of itself exposes the president to jail time. I think it is time for a comprehensive plea agreement. It would be a lot better for the country, for us to be able to move on, and for Donald Trump to negotiate now while he still has something to negotiate with, rather than waiting for the end of his presidency for all of these criminal proceedings against him to really turn up the heat. And he could very well send him to prison for a long time if he doesn't work this out.
Do you get the sense, I think what's so jolting is when we put those 6 investigations that are going on right now up there, and you think about the time and the money and the energy that is going into this. Do you think President Trump will make it through his next 2 years?
Well, that depends on what he wants to do, and also Congress. As I say, I think he ought to negotiate a plea deal because it's going to be very, very bad for him in the criminal process as things move along. People are copping pleas. There are lots of guilty either pleas or convictions of his top people, campaign manager, deputy campaign manager, national security advisor, so forth. So he's in deep trouble. But if he wants to dig in his heels and stay there, then we'll see what Congress wants to do. The Democrats may want to impeach him, and the Republicans have to decide whether to, I think, do the smart thing and ask him to leave, tell him to leave, and calm things down with Mike Pence for 2 years, or suffer through this. But it's turning into a national disaster. We've got the economy is on the brink of some difficulties here with the trade war heating up. Nobody really knows who's in charge in the United States.
Speaking of being in charge and the economy, you know, we're got a couple of days left until this potential government shutdown. And this is the time at which the president decides to take the director of the Office of Management and Budget and making him his acting chief of staff. The question was asked of Sarah Sanders, will he continue to have both roles? And she said this: Mick Mulvaney will not resign from the Office of Management and Budget, but will spend all of his time devoted to his role as the acting chief of staff for the president. Ross Vought will handle day-to-day operations and run OMB. What's your reaction to that, to pulling, at the time that you're facing potential government shutdown, you're talking about the budget, pull the budget guy, move him to the chief of staff for as long as he can stay because he's acting? And is there any ethical concern about having both roles?
Well, it's a disaster. There's complete chaos in this administration. And to have the government with a $1 trillion budget and a potential government shutdown, and you don't have anybody really in charge over at OMB. You're just using somebody temporary at OMB, at the Office of Management and Budget, because you want to put the director of OMB over in the chief of staff's position because nobody else wants it, because nobody wants to work for this president. It's complete chaos in this White House, and putting that on top of all these investigations, something's got to get fixed very quickly, or we could be in serious trouble. The markets are getting nervous. The trade war is heating up. Now they're talking about shutting down the government. Why? Because the president doesn't get some stupid wall that he wants down on the southern border. It's ridiculous what's going on right now.
I got one more here. Let me ask you what you think about the current director of that office, Emory Rounds. Initially, when he was announced as the nominee, there were encouraging responses from several of you who've held the office. But now I see on Twitter and from you being on the shows, Norm Eisen, you, Walter Schaub, former directors, are just lambasting this administration daily. What do you think of the job he's doing now?
Emory Rounds is over at the Office of Government Ethics, and I think he's doing a very good job at the Office of Government Ethics.
Yeah.
That's an independent agency. The problem is they don't have the enforcement powers they ought to have, and because of that, when they write the White House and tell the White House somebody's in violation, for example, Kellyanne Conway has been shilling for Ivanka clothes or violating the Hatch Act or whatever, the White House basically tells the Office of Government Ethics to pound sand. Emory Rounds, he was my deputy in the Bush White House in the ethics office there. He's worked at OGE for a long time. He's doing the absolute best job he can as director of the Office of Government Ethics, but they need to have enforcement power. They need to have the power to investigate, because what we're finding out is that everybody in the Trump administration is just ignoring the Office of Government Ethics. They simply don't care what OGE has to say about what the rules are.
All right, Richard Painter, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.